Hello everyone, welcome back to another stream. And we are back for a quick one, another little gaming stream that I have to do just over an hour. So we can see how far we get with this. I'm pretty excited. We're most likely gonna start React at some way. And I hope we'll be ready. We're gonna be doing Sass now. So yeah. Yeah, got my chat ready. Yep. We are good. We're ready. We are ready. Okay, so Sass. Sass or syntactically awesome style sheets. Okay, so what's going to be quite sassy is a language extension of CSS. It adds features that aren't available using basic CSS syntax. Sass makes it easier for developers to simplify and maintain the style sheets for their projects. Sass can extend the CSS language because it is a preprocessor. It takes code written using Sass syntax and converts it into the basic CSS. This allows you to create variables, nest CSS rules into others, and import other Sass files, among other things. The result is more compact, easier to read code. There are two syntaxes available for Sass. The first, known as SCSS, Sassy CSS, and used throughout these challenges, is an extension of the syntax of CSS. This means that every valid CSS style sheet is a valid SCSS file with the same meaning. Files using this syntax have the .scss extension. That's a tongue twister. The second and older syntax, known as the indented syntax, or sometimes just Sass, uses indentation rather than brackets to indicate nesting of selectors, and new lines rather than semicolons to separate properties. Files using this syntax have the .sass extension. Okay. This section introduces the basic features of Sass. Are we gonna do SCSS? Is that one? Okay, let's go. Go to the first one. Ooh. So, store data with Sass variables. One feature of Sass that's different than CSS is that it uses variables. They are declared and set to store data similarly to JavaScript. In JavaScript, variables are defined using the let and const keywords. In Sass, variables start with a $ followed by the variable name. Here are a couple examples. So one example where variables are useful is when a number of elements need to be the same color. If that color is changed, the only place to edit the code is the variable. Yeah, super useful. Create a variable text color and set it to red. Then change the value of the color property for the blog post and h2 to the text color variable. Okay, so we're gonna call it, what was it? Main text color? And we just do red. Then change the value of the color property for the blog post and h2 to text colors variable. So should we just be able to do text color? Does that work? Or do we need the, okay, need the $ in there? Well, that's cool. Nest CSS with Sass. Sass allows nesting of CSS rules, which is a useful way of organizing a style sheet. Normally, each element is targeted on a different line to style it, like so. Yeah, So like nav, nav-ul, and nav-ule. For a large project, the CSS file will have many lines and rules. This is where nesting can help organize your code by placing child-style rules within the respective parent elements. It would have definitely helped us in our previous one. We got nav, ul, li. Yeah, that looks way better. Use the nesting technique shown above to reorganize the CSS rules for both children of blog post element. For testing purposes, the h1 should come before the p element. To reorganize the CSS rules for both children of blog post. Okay, so h1 and p are children. So then we'll just remove that and put it at the end, and then indent these. That P doesn't fall under the specific one. That should be it then. There we go. Create reusable CSS with mixins. Ah, didn't we work with mixins in JavaScript? I think we did. In Sass, a mixin is a group of CSS declarations that can be reused throughout the styles sheet. Newer CSS features take time before they are fully adopted and ready to use in all browsers. As features are added to browsers, CSS rules using them may need vendor prefixes. Consider box shadow. Yeah, annoying. It's a lot of typing to rewrite this rule for all the elements that have a box shadow, or to change each value to test different effects. Mixins are like functions for CSS. Here's how to write one. @mixin. Is that the name of the mixin? Okay, so it needs to be declared with @mixin. And then it takes these parameters and then applies them. Yeah, that's pretty cool. The definition starts with @mixin followed by a custom name. The parameters, the x, y, blur, and c in the example are optional. Now anytime a box shadow rule is defined, only a single line calling the mixin replaces having to type all the vendor prefixes. A mixin is called with the @include directive. Oh, okay. You need to @include it. Interesting. You can't just do @box shadow. And the name doesn't matter even though it's an existing CSS property. Well. Interesting. So write a mixin for border radius and give it a radius parameter. It should use all the vendor prefixes from the example. Then use the border radius mixin to give the hashtag awesome element a border radius of 15 pixels. Okay. We need to create a new mixin. Border... Was it? Border radius, was it? Yeah. Oh yeah. It's a function. It should use all the vendor prefixes from the example. Okay. And what values should we set it to? A border radius of 15 pixels. Do we just call this one radius? And then we might as well just edit all of these, I guess. And all we're going to take is radius for the X. It should be it. So we don't have to return or anything. Interesting. So the value will set all of these in just the single include. Huh. Then we need to include border radius. You do that right? Oh, I need to also pass what was it, 15? It was 15 pixels, yeah. Probably spelling it would help. There we go. That is so cool. But you would have a lot of includes. So it's not as... I like seeing like width height, so you can see exactly what it is. Border radius, okay, if you named it well, then you'd know what it does. Otherwise you'd have to refer to the mixin. I heard that there are compilers that will automatically handle browser, different browser versions of this. But then you'd really pollute your CSS, wouldn't you? It's better to then have a single mixin, then call that single mixin everywhere, one line, versus having 4 lines. That should be it. So we can use if and else to add logic to your styles. Wow, the @if directive in Sass is useful to test for a specific case. It works just like the if statement in JavaScript. @mixin make bold bool. If bool is true, font weight bold. And just like in JavaScript, else if and else test for more conditions. If val is danger, color red. If val is alert. Oh, so you can like pass in something in the parameter, and depending on that value, you could set the color. That's cool. Create a mixin called border stroke that takes a parameter val. The mixin should check for the following conditions using if, if, and else. Okay, so @mixin border stroke needs to have val as a parameter, and we should have ifs that check for if it's light. So so we don't need to do we don't need quotes or anything? That's cool. The 1 pixel solid black. Shouldn't we add border stroke or something to this? And then we need a else if val is equal to medium, which it is now, then 3 pixels solid black. Doesn't highlight, so you can't really see. The indentation is the only thing that you have. I think that's fine. But I think they missed something crucial here. You're supposed to add border stroke, I'm assuming, just like border radius. Does that change anything? Changing it to white won't help. Add include border stroke medium. That is medium. 33 pixels. Yeah, they didn't explain that one too great. So it's just border, the CSS property, border width, border color. What is border stroke? I assume they just mean the short form. So border. There you go. That's it. Okay. At else if val equal to heavy, then whoops. Oh, come on. Border is going to be 6 pixels solid black. And if it's none, I guess that can be our else case. Border none. Just like that. And yeah, does it use absolute? Can I use 3? Oh, you can't. Oh, that's confusing. So you can't use triple. And that's an assignment. That didn't seem to change anything. That's weird. What's it doing when I do that? Okay. Anyway, that should be it. There we go. Use @for to create a Sass loop. Why are we doing this in CSS? I still don't get that. Did someone just get bored and decide that they want JavaScript in their CSS? I mean, you can literally do JavaScript that can edit styles. Doing it in CSS is just polluting. Like, take it away. CSS was specifically made to stylize the page. I don't think I'll ever be using things like that. The variables are nice in terms of having a single color that you can change. Apparently you also need a fallback if a browser doesn't support it, like older browsers. The @for directive adds styles in a loop, very similar to a for loop in JavaScript. @for is used in 2 ways, start through end or start to end. The main difference is that start to end excludes the end number and start through end includes the end number. Here's a start through end example. For I from 1 through 12, column, and then whatever the number is. So that's when you're using probably stuff like Bootstrap. The I part is the syntax to combine a variable I with the text to make a string. Okay, so it's pull it again. Think right now. String literals, that's it. So when the Sass file is converted to CSS, it looks like this. Okay. This is a powerful way to create a grid layout. Now you have 12 options for the column widths available as CSS classes. Write a for directive that takes a variable j that goes from 1 to 6. It should create 5 classes called text1 to text5, where each has a font size set to 10 pixels multiplied by the index. Okay, so for j from 1 to 6, was it? 1 to 6. Is it through or to? They use through. Well, we can do 1. We can do 1 to 6. Because it's either start through end or start to end. Start to end excludes the end number. The Yeah, which is what we want, so 1 to 5. Okay. So they give us one example, then we do the complete opposite. To create 5 classes called text. So text, and then wait, so the hash is needed? That's the syntax? So it's similar like how you'd use a $sign in JavaScript for the string literal? So the hash is needed, okay. Font size multiplied by 10. So 10 pixels times J. That should have been it. Unless it's because of the pixels that I add, so I should just do 10 times. No, that didn't change that. My for loop fine? For j from 1 to 6. Yeah, we close it. Text, and this should replace the number with the loop number. Font size. Maybe we should do 10 times that, and then pixels at the end of it. Doesn't that calculate? No? Let's try through, even though 2 should have been fine. That doesn't change anything. So text. Oh, hold on. I see I don't have a closing parentheses there. So does that mean I can just go back to 10 pixels? The 10 pixels is fine there. If I go times j. Okay, there you go. Wow, so it somehow magically handles the fact that that is a string. I would have thought that we would have had to have the 10 times whatever the index is in brackets and the pixels out of it. That's cool. However it handles that. Yeah, so there we go. Use each to map over items in a list. The last challenge showed how the for directive uses a starting and ending value to loop a certain number of times. Sass also offers the each directive, which loops over each item in a list or map. On each iteration, the variable gets assigned to the current value from the list or map. So each color in blue, red, green, color, text, color. Oh. Color becomes what one of those random colors, blue, red, or green. A map has slightly different syntax. Here's an example. Colors, color 1, blue, color 2, red, color 3, green. Each key. Man, why would they confuse you with this? Like, we have JavaScript for this. Stop, Sass, stop. Key color in colors. dot color text. So this is dot one text or dot two text. No, whatever color. So dot blue text, red text, or whatever the case is. Yeah, blue text, red text. Okay. Note that the key variable is needed for reference to reference the keys in the map. But where is it used? Color in colors, but where is key used? Note that the key variable is needed to reference the keys in the map, otherwise the compiled CSS would have color 1, color 2 in it. Okay, that's great, but you haven't explained where is it used. Like, I don't see it used anywhere. Or is that just the syntax? That's just how it works. Okay. Write in each directive that goes through a list blue, black, red, and assigns each variable to a color background class where the color part changes for each item. Each class should set the background color the respective color. I'm just gonna say, like, off the bat, not liking Sass. SCSS, or the other one. It's weird why they're showing us this one. Is this like the latest one, or is this like the outdated one? So we need to have, so it's almost like an array, or map as they call it. So we need colors, I guess, as well. Blue, black, red. Okay. Do we call it color as well? Color 1, blue. Color 2, red. Color 3, black. Blue, black, red. Blue, black, red. And it assigns each variable to a color background class where the color part changes for each item. So we need each, we just call this key color in colors. And then we specify whatever color is. Nope. No! Oh my god. Color. Background. We need to change the background color, right? Okay, so let's see if we've got that right. So color, background. So is it assigning each one to color and then color background, the selector? Should be it, unless I'm missing something. What colors is starting to look really weird. Color blue, color 2 is black, color 3 is... Oh. There's your problem. There we go. Apply a style until a condition is met with @while. The @while directive is an option with similar functionality to the JavaScript while loop. It creates CSS rules until a condition is met. The @for challenge gave an example to create a simple grid system. This can also work with @while. So x is 1 while x is less than 13. Okay, so we're creating the grids. First define a variable x and set it to 1. Next use @while directive to create the grid system while x is less than 13. After setting the CSS rule for width, x is incremented by 1 to avoid an infinite loop. So infinite loops exist in the CSS scripting world too. So to those of you who said that CSS wasn't a scripting language, hey, it is now. And you combine it with Sass. I'm just like still trying to figure out why. You could do this in JavaScript and like have it clean in a single module, in a single file. Dynamically adding the classes. So what about the data? You're adding the classes. Because my logic here is, okay, you're styling the classes, but if you're going to be dynamically adding this amount of HTML elements, you can't do that with Sass or CSS at all. So you would use JavaScript. So if you're already going to be dynamically creating the content with JavaScript, why wouldn't you be dynamically styling the content with JavaScript? It's one place to do it. I guess as we go on, maybe they will explain this better. So there should be 10 different classes from text 1 to text 10. Then set font size to 5 pixels multiplied by the current index number. Make sure to avoid an infinite loop. I'll try my best. So this is our index. Shouldn't this be I instead of X? Why are we changing the standard? I'm gonna make it I. While I is less than 11. Do you want 10 or 11? Okay. If it's less than 10, we'll get into, but I only changes at the end. Let's test something quickly. Oh no, I've done it again. That's exactly what I wanted to avoid. I was trying to add the I at the end before that brace, but you know, muscle memory wants to close the bracket. Stop it. I was trying to figure out what was going on there. Can you actually like see it happening in real time? Anyway, we're gonna have to reload this page now because we borked it. Okay, let's bring this back. I managed to save that. That should avoid an infinite loop. I plus 1, and then what we're trying to do is... What are we trying to do? Change the font size. Okay, so let's change the font size by... on text 1, right? Text 1 to text 10. So text, and then it's the number I, the indexed, font size 10 pixels times I. I may have missed something. Should be text hyphen the number, font size 10 pixels times I. That should have been fine, shouldn't it have? Oh, because it's not JavaScript, so you need to add that the dollar symbol everywhere. Okay, we didn't get the last one, so it's gonna have to be less than 11. There you go. Oh, is it not times 10? Sorry. It's 5. Should... Oh, okay. Set font size to be 5 multiply. Okay. There we go. Should be fine now. Split your styles into smaller chunks with partials. Partials in Sass are separate files that hold segments of CSS code. These are imported and used in other Sass files. This is a great way to group similar code into a module to keep it organized. Names for partials start with the underscore character, which tells Sass it is a small segment of CSS and not to convert it into a CSS file. Also, Sass files end with a .scss file extension. To bring the code in the partial into another Sass file, use the import directive. For example, if all your mixins are saved in a partial named mixins.scss and they are needed in the main SCSS file, this is how to use them in the main file. Import mixins. Okay. Note that the underscore is not needed in the import statement. Sass understands it as a partial. Once a partial is imported into a file, all variables, mixins, and other code are available to use. Write an @import statement to import a partial named variables.scss. Okay, so @import variables. Almost got me there. Oh, you don't need to include the file format either. File extension. That makes it much easier. Extend one set of CSS styles to another element. Sass has a feature called Extend that makes it easy to borrow the CSS rules from one element and build upon them in another. For example, the below block of CSS rule styles a panel class, and it has a background color, height, and border. Now you want another panel called Big Panel. It has the same base properties as panel, but also needs a width and font size. It's possible to copy and paste the initial CSS rules from panel, but the code becomes repetitive as you add more types of panels. The extend directive is a simple way to reuse the rules written for one element, then add more for another. Oh, so you're just, adding whatever else extra you need. That's cool. The big panel will have the same properties as panel in addition to the new styles. Make a class info important that extends info and also has a background color set to magenta. Okay, so we need info important, was it? Do we not have spaces afterwards? That looks ugly. And here we need @extend.info, and all we add then is a background color magenta. Am I missing something? Don't tell me it's because of this space. Okay, it's not because of that space. And I do have my closing... Yeah, I do. Wait, where's your closing one? Hold on. That's yours. That belongs there with info. That belongs there. So what does this belong to? Nothing. There you go, that was the issue. This is an important post. It should extend the class info and have its own CSS styles. That's cool. I actually like that. So not so much the variables where you start doing for and if loops and all that crazy stuff, but this kind of stuff is super useful. Because the amount of times you might have, like I know for example, my buttons or whatever, they're all pretty much the same except for one or two things. So if I have a base for that, and I mean then again I could just have classes and the non-repetitive ones I just add the extra stuff onto it, but I mean, you know what I just realized now? This is cool, but you could have just added two classes to this. Info as the base and info important. And info important just has a background color. If that makes sense. So you could have done this. Just add info and info important. And then it ends up being exactly the same. You just use two classes. Because then you're not duplicating the CS code, it's exactly the same here. The only difference is you have, you know, a bit of extra code in your HTML. But it's good to know both ways, so that's nothing new. Oh, we're done! I can't believe it! I thought there would have been a bit more to Sass. We're gonna actually be doing React now. Oh dear. There's gonna be so much. I've got 20 minutes, so we can at least touch base with it, can't we? React, popularized by Facebook, is an open source JavaScript library for building user interfaces. It is used to create components, handle state and props, utilize event listeners, and certain lifecycle methods to update data as it changes. React combines HTML with JavaScript functionality to create its own markup language, JSX, because, you know, Sass got lonely that it was the only one using JavaScript. So we added HTML into your JavaScript. This section will introduce you to all of these concepts and how to implement them for use with your own projects. Okay, so which is the language that combines all three? Imagine what a mess it would be. Let's go to the first lesson. Create a simple JSX element. React is an open source Vue library created and maintained by Facebook. It's a great tool to render the user interface of modern web applications. React uses a syntax extension of JavaScript called JSX that allows you to write HTML directly within JavaScript. This has several benefits. It lets you use the full programmatic power of JavaScript within HTML and helps to keep your code readable. How? If it's the HTML is no longer separated. For the most part, JSX is similar to the HTML that you have already learned. However, there are a few key differences that will be covered throughout these challenges. For instance, because JSX is a syntactic extension of JavaScript, you can actually write JavaScript directly within JSX. Wait. To do this, you simply include the code you want to be treated as JavaScript within curly braces. Okay. Keep this in mind since it's used in several future challenges. However, because JSX is not valid JavaScript, JSX must be compiled into JavaScript. The transpiler, Babel, is a popular tool for this process. For your convenience, it's already added behind the scenes for these challenges. If you happen to write syntactically invalid JSX, you will see the first test in these challenges fail. So what happens to the HTML in the JavaScript? Or does it just handle things like use inner HTML or something? It's worth noting that under the hood the challenges are calling React DOM.render JSX document.getElement by ID root. This function call is what places your JSX into React's own lightweight representation of the DOM. React then uses snapshots of its own DOM to optimize updating only specific parts of the actual DOM. Instructions. The current code uses JSX to assign a div element to the constant JSX. Replace the div with an h1 element and add the text hello JSX inside it. So you want me to change the div to h1 and state hello JSX. Hello world, hello JSX. So because I wrote that variable, is it literally turning every variable that has HTML in it and displaying it on the web page? Let's try something else. What if I just do test? Nothing happens. If I put the test in a paragraph test, paragraph, nothing happens. Okay. What if it's an H2 tag? Nothing. H1. So it was clearly set up for that example somewhere. Damn it. Create a complex JSX element. The last challenge was a simple example of JSX, but JSX can represent more complex HTML as well. One important thing to know about nested JSX is that it must return a single element. This one parent element would wrap all the other levels of nested elements. For instance, several JSX elements written as siblings with no parent wrapper element will not transpile. Here's an example, valid JSX, because it's part of a div, and those are its parent. But these do not have a parent. Okay, so define a new constant, JSX, that renders a div contains the following elements in order. Okay, so const JSX equal to... Can we do it on multiple lines? They didn't explain that. An H1, a P, an unordered list that contains 3 list items. Man, now if I had, what do you call it? Emmet to speed this up. Okay, so that's single line. That should be all you want, right? When rendering multiple elements like this, you can wrap them all in parentheses, but it's not strictly required. Also note that this challenge uses a div tag to wrap all the child elements within a single parent element. If you remove the div, the JSX will no longer transpile. Keep this in mind since it will also apply when you return JSX elements in React components. Okay, so expected corresponding JSX closing tag for the. You don't technically need to close a list item. In fact, didn't Google specify that you shouldn't? Those are things that you can omit. That's strange. So now we have to include it? Huh. There we go. What if I do it like this? Can we do it on multiple lines? Oh, you can. How does it handle the multiple lines? JavaScript, that wouldn't work. Magic. It just works. Okay. What? The div should contain a p tag as a second element. But what happened to the h1? An h1, a p, and an... The elements in the following order. The h1 is first, and then the p. Oh, do you mean that you don't want them... Okay, you want them in that order, but they open and close on themselves. So you wanted it like that. That's what you wanted. There we go. Okay, add comments in JSX. JSX is a syntax that gets compiled into valid JavaScript. Sometimes for readability, you might need to add comments to your code. Like most programming languages, JSX has its own way to do this. To put comments inside JSX, you need the syntax to wrap around the comment text. The code editor has a JSX element similar to what you created in the last challenge. Add a comment somewhere within the provided div element without modifying the existing h1 or p elements. We can't do that as a comment? Is that not valid? Oh, it like literally renders it like that. Huh. This is a comment. There you go. HTML elements to the DOM. So far you've learned that JSX is a convenient tool to write readable HTML within JavaScript. With React, we can render this JSX directly to the HTML DOM using React's rendering API known as React DOM. React DOM offers a simple method to render React elements to the DOM, which looks like this. React DOM.render component to render, so you would have to create a component, which they haven't taught us yet, and a target node, I'm assuming where you would want to render it, where the first argument is the React element or component that you want to render, and the second argument is the DOM node that you want to render the component to. As you would expect, React DOM.render must be called after the JSX element declarations, just like how you must declare variables before using them. The code editor has a simple JSX component. Is that what a component is? Just a variable? Use the React DOM.render method to render this component to the page. You can pass defined JSX elements directly in as the first argument, and use document.getElementById to select the DOM node to render them to. There is a div with id equal to challenge node available for you to use. Make sure you don't change the JSX constant. Okay, so React DOM.render JSX and then challenge node. No, it's not challenge node. Div. Oh, we're gonna have to use document.getElementById. I thought this would have made it simpler. Really? We're back to using this? Oh well. JSX document.getElementById challenge node. Why didn't that work? React DOM, did I misspell it? .render JSX, which is the constant. You can pass defined JSX elements directly in as the first argument and use document.getElementById to select the DOM to render them to. I don't see anything. So what is going on? React DOM.render JSX and then document.getElementById challenge node. You sure it's called challenge node? There's a challenge node. Ah, this is our stuff. We added. Not crazy. Okay, but anyway, why is it not working? Should render the DOM with ID challenge. That's what I did. If I'm doing it wrong, then... Oh, we're using JavaScript. This needs a quote. See, that's the confusing part when you don't need quotes there. So you gotta get used to that. You don't need quotes inside of React, but you need quotes outside of React. Oh, and it's just funny still having to use document.getElement by ID. I'm sure there are other ways. I mean, that seems like an elegant solution, you know, JSX, and then you've got the old way. That's cool though. So we have an empty element, and then we're rendering it to the DOM. Kind of how we did with creating nodes and whatnot, and assigning values to them. Define an HTML class in JSX. Now that you're getting comfortable writing JSX, thank you for assuming that, you may be wondering how it differs from HTML. So far it may seem that HTML and JSX are exactly the same, no? One key difference in JSX is that you can no longer use the word class to define HTML classes. This is because class is a reserved word in JavaScript. Instead, JSX uses class name. In fact, the naming convention for all HTML attributes and event references in JSX become camel case. For example, a click event in JSX is onClick instead of onClick. And likewise, onChange becomes onChange camel case. While this is a subtle difference, it is an important one to keep in mind moving forward. Apply a class of myDiv to the div provided in the JSX code. Apply a class of myDiv to the div provided in the JSX class. So you do class name. Do you use the quotes still? Or are there no quotes? Is it just equal to myDiv? Oh, okay, you do quote them. Didn't seem to change anything though. Apply a class of myDiv to the div provided. Run tests. What did it do though? Are we just applying a class and that's it? Weird. Okay, I expected it to change. Yeah. Wow. That changes everything, because then you're so used to writing HTML with class equal to, and now you have to like, I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing. That's almost like Facebook or React were completely trying to change how HTML works. Because no longer is a class, now it's class name. I mean, if you relied on this purely, but yeah, I don't think I agree with that. I understand why it was done, because of the reserved word, but geez. And then one day you forget, you work on pure HTML and you change something to class name and you wonder why it doesn't work. Oh, why have they done this? There surely is a better way to do this, instead of doing class name. I guess we'll figure out the further we go if we go further with React. Learn about self-closing JSX tags. So far you've seen how JSX differs from HTML in a key way with the use of class name versus class for defining HTML classes. Another important way in which JSX differs from HTML is the idea of the self-closing tag. In HTML, almost all tags have been an opening and closing tag. The closing tags have always has a / before the tag name that you are closing. However, there are special instances in HTML called self-closing tags, or tags that don't require both an opening and closing tags before another tag can start. Exactly. For example, the line break tag can be written as BR or as BR with the closing tag, but should never be written as with the opening and closing tag since it doesn't contain any content. In JSX the rules are a little different. Any JSX element can be written with a self-closing tag, and every element must be closed. The line break tag, for example, must always be written as BR with the closing tag in order to be valid JSX that can be transpiled. A div, on the other hand, can be written as div or opening and closing. The difference is that in the first syntax version, there is no way to include anything in the div. You will see in later challenges that this syntax is useful when rendering React components. Fix the errors in the code editor so there is valid JSX and successfully transpose. Make sure you don't change any of the content. You only need to close tags when they are needed. Okay. Remove comment and change code below this line. Welcome to React. Okay, so we need a closing tag there. Be sure to close all tags. Like that. That's very interesting. So you need the closing part. Why do they do that though, I'm wondering? Why couldn't they just catch either case? Because BR or BR is valid in HTML. So why didn't they do the same? Why are they specifically... Guess they're trying to set a standard? This feels very much like they were trying to rewrite HTML. Because HTML allows you to do either or. And maybe they were like, no, we don't like this loose standard. So, as our part of HTML version JS React. Okay, so we've got to remember to close tags for tags that don't need closing tags. Okay, and this will be our last one because I'm going to be off. So let's look at creating a stateless functional component. Components are the core of React. Everything in React is a component, and here you will learn how to create one. There are two ways to create a React component. The first way is to use a JavaScript function. Defining a component in this way creates a stateless functional component. The concept of state in an application will be covered in later challenges. For now, think of a stateless component as one that can receive data and render it, but does not manage or track changes to that data. We'll cover the second way to create a React component in the next challenge. To create a component with a function, you simply write a JavaScript function that returns either JSX or null. One important thing to note is that React requires your function name to begin with a capital letter. Here's an example of a stateless functional component that assigns an HTML class in JSX. After being transpiled, the div will have a CSS class of custom class. Const demo component equal to function, return, div class name equal to custom class. Because a JSX component represents HTML, you can put several components together to create a more complex HTML page. This is one of the key advantages of the component architecture React provides. It allows you to compose your UI from many separate isolated components. This makes it easier to build and maintain complex user interfaces. Yeah, because you just call demo component, demo component, demo component every time or whatever. The code editor has a function called myComponent. Complete this function so it returns a single div element which contains some string of text. Okay, so we need a return. We don't need to have a class or anything, we're just gonna a div. On because it's literal. Wait, do I have to? I don't have to do that, do I? It's so confusing because string of are keywords. But it seems to render it just fine. And if I add the actual... Huh. There we go. Cool, and we are done for today. Next time tomorrow, we're gonna create a React component. Wow. I don't like some things that it does, but I do like the other things. I guess it's just about finding the things you like and applying those things, really. Because the way that you can easily push to the DOM is a bit quicker in React than it would be if I had to use, document get element by ID, then create a node there, then push the content to that node and whatnot. So yeah, that's pretty neat. But we'll be continuing tomorrow. Right now I've got to get ready for my gaming stream on my main channel. So until then, bye for now.